are you? What are you?
Oh shit, here we go again.
A Working Man is a Jason Statham movie, and if you've seen a Jason Statham movie, well, you've probably seen this one.
Look at those bricks. You're a working man.
That's right.
This arm has been ripped off completely and reattached with this fucking arm.
Jason Statham is playing Jason Statham, and essentially he is going after his friend's daughter because, well, the mafia took her, the Russian mafia. It's good to see the Russians are the bad guys again, I really like that. But essentially he is making his way through the mafia, and you know, it's something, it's alright, I guess. I mean, in terms of like a plot, it is very simple and bare bones at that. I mean, if you're looking for a much more convoluted and over-the-top storyline, his last movie, The Beekeeper, is probably it for you. And that's the thing. As much as I had a lot of fun with this movie, it is a lot more generic and kinda silly in places than The Beekeeper. Now, The Beekeeper was not a amazing film, but in terms of direction, editing, and story-wise, it was a much more competent film. Whereas this film, it feels very much like a generic action film.
She's my family.
Just get my back if I ever need it.
I drove a car off a freeway on top of a train while I was on fire. Not the car. I was on fire.
And this movie feels more like, I guess, New Game Plus mode on a video game. Like, The Beekeeper was essentially the main playthrough of Jason Statham. Now he's doing A Working Man, where he is essentially more or less going through the same thing, except he's got all the power-ups from the last movie. And I'm not kidding, by the way. All of the fight scenes are pretty, well, lackluster. Like, a lot of these, you know, awesome one-on-one fights, he beats the bad guy in, like, less than a second. It's, like, kind of laughable, and I'm not gonna lie, by the end of the movie, it was hilarious.
Time to get to work. I died for 5 minutes, and then I came back to life.
Now, I'll talk about the pros, and it's Jason Statham. When you go into a Jason Statham movie, well, you're gonna be entertained with Jason Statham doing Jason Statham stuff. And essentially, I also liked the opening credits. I think they were visually nice, and I quite liked it. It leaned into the more, I guess, comic booky sort of feel to it, but it was quite nice. And the final action sequence is hilarious. It was a lot of fun, where it was just guns going off, you know, freaking a bike gang comes in, and it's like over-the-top action fun. But the hierarchy and the story progression as to how Jason Statham gets to the main girl and saves the girl, it is very odd. So, like, he's essentially tracking down one person at a time until he finds out who the person who stole the girl is. And essentially, he becomes a drug dealer for a bit, and then he finally is able to get to the girl. Eventually, after killing like a couple of dudes. And scenes go really fast in this. I'm not even kidding. So, essentially, when the girl gets kidnapped, Jason Statham finds out, and the family offers money to Jason Statham to get her back. But then he's like, that's not me anymore. So he then goes away, he talks to his blind ally for a bit, then he comes back and he's like, okay, I'm going to help you find your daughter. And in the span of one scene, I'm not even kidding, we should have had like a couple of shots of Jason Statham like wandering, maybe some flashbacks of him spending time with that girl, and maybe shots of his daughter and spending time with her. But then it just sort of like, in the span of one shot, he's like, okay, I'm back. And it's like sort of fast forwarding the whole thing. Especially this one story beat where he becomes a drug dealer for a bit, he gets caught, and then he just essentially is just going down the killing route again. What was the whole point? Now, I will say that if you did find the Beekeeper side story with the FBI agent a bit, dare I say, boring, this movie is probably a lot better, as it mainly focuses on Jason Statham, which I think that is probably a plus to this movie. But when it comes to the whole Jason Statham, the story this time around is just guy going up against Russian mafia. And he doesn't even get rid of the Russian mafia. They set up for a sequel. I'm not even kidding. They just set up for a sequel, like blatantly towards the end of the movie. It's like, why? Now, my options for a movie were very limited, and the other choice was Snow White, and well, that movie's doing swell.
All of this is for a girl.
I'm not stopping until I bring her home. I watched the woman I love get tossed from a plane and hit by another plane mid-air.
Jason Statham is essentially one of the last of the 80s, 90s era action film heroes. Like, I mean, when it comes to action films nowadays, besides the John Wick franchise and the Tom Cruise mega blockbuster films, a lot of the action films now are just sort of with these new guys and have a unique gimmick. Whereas Jason Statham is essentially selling his name on, well, Jason Statham. I'm not watching it because of any source material or any previous sort of connection or, you know, this actor is hot right now. I'm watching this movie because it's a Jason Statham action movie where, you know, that's, I guess, a pro, I guess. Oh yeah, another thing about this movie is that he's essentially trying to, you know, get more custody of his daughter and just spend a lot more time with her. But essentially the father-in-law, you know, is not having it because he blames, well, Jason Statham for killing his wife because he was overseas in deployment and the wife was suffering from depression. Essentially, the father-in-law is blaming him. But then the Russian mob, like, burns the house down. Jason Statham saves him, gets him out, and then, you know, of course, rightfully so, the father-in-law blames Jason Statham. But then the daughter is like, you know, it's not his fault, Grandpa. It's not his fault. And then the guy's like, yeah, you're right. Go and get those guys. And then that's it. That's the end of that character, which is hilarious.
Is that a grenade?
Yep.
This is nothing like Fortnite.
It's called the rivalry of men. You wouldn't understand unless you got a dong up underneath that skirt.
This movie is generic, stupid, and overall just a really dumb film. But by God, it is a ton of fun where bullets just fly people across the wall and it's just over the top, stupid 90s cheese, and I love it. I love this sort of era of dumb action films, and it's so much fun. Like, I mean, I will say this, Jason Statham is probably the last breed of the 90s, 80s action films, and I kind of love it for it. It's so dumb. Like, I've really enjoyed this film, even if it was like a lesser Beekeeper. I guess the negative to this movie that a lot of people will find is that it is essentially harkening back to the 90s, 80s action cheese fest. And a lot of people are sort of over that. But let me tell you, I'm not. I'm loving it. And I cannot wait. To see A Working Man 2, 3, 4, Beekeeper 2, 3, 4. And like, these movies are just dumb fun, and I can enjoy myself with these movies. They don't take much brain effort, and I love that about them. Now, I will have to disclose this. If you were a fan of The Beekeeper, or you at least liked that movie, I think you'll be a bit disappointed with this movie because, well, it's not as polished or refined or well edited as that movie. But for A Working Man as a standalone 90s, 80s schlocky action film, I think it does its job, and it does its job well. And those are my thoughts on A Working Man. I give A Working Man, I want to give it 5 beers out of 10. It is just a generic action film that you can have a lot of fun with. Maybe I'll bump it up to 6. 5 or 6 out of 10 beers, because by God, if you have alcohol with this movie, you will have a ton of fun. This movie is just over the top schlockiness. It's so dumb. But yeah, thank you all for watching the video. Please click the like button and comment your thoughts on A Working Man down below. What do you think of this movie? Do you think it is as dumb as it is? Do you unironically like this movie? Do you think this movie is a really shit film that is worse than Snow White? Comment below in the comments down below. And subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon, it keeps me going and it keeps me making content. And as always, everyone, I just want to say, take care and have a good one.
During the threat of an assassination attempt, I appeared convincingly in front of Congress as Barack Obama.